Welcome to CDCon 2021. This is Roadmaps for Open Source Projects, an experience report by Oleg Nenashev and Mark Waite. We're so grateful that you're here joined with us and look forward to questions and answers after the presentation is complete. Oleg's unavailable to join me for the recording portion of this, but we look forward to having him with us while we're doing question and answer. Oleg is a principal software engineer at CloudBees. He's a Jenkins core maintainer, a member of the Jenkins governance board, and a continuous delivery foundation ambassador. What that means is that when Oleg's involved with Jenkins, he tends to work on Jenkins core at its center, the very basis on which all Jenkins work happens. He makes sure that that core is healthy and well constructed, runs well. Oleg also works on presenting Jenkins online meetups. He shares what he's learned, and shares his experience, and helps others as they learn how to use Jenkins more effectively. He's also a key player in the Google Summer of Code project in Jenkins and has been for multiple years. Our results in Google Summer of Code have been nothing short of delightful thanks to Oleg's work in Google Summer of Code. He's also a maintainer of the Jenkins Configuration as Code plugin and a great contributor there in helping to assure that Jenkins installations can be configured as code, can be cared for with source code, and can be maintained readily. He's also the creator and primary maintainer of Jenkins File Runner, a way to run Jenkins as a function in a cloud-based environment. I'm Mark Waite. I'm a manager at CloudBees, a Jenkins core maintainer, and the Jenkins documentation officer. And I also maintain the Jenkins Git plugin. This talk is about the Jenkins roadmap and why we think other open source projects may want to consider adopting roadmaps, how they could use roadmaps, and what they might do to help them. We're going to use our story and our experiences as a way to hope that we will be able to share with you some of the insights we've gained. While this presentation talks about Jenkins, it's not so much that we intend for it to be about Jenkins as we want it to be about what we've learned while working with developing the Jenkins roadmap and refining and improving it. You can find these slides through this QR code at bit.ly CDCon 2021 roadmaps. Now, what is a roadmap? Well, in the Jenkins environment, a roadmap is a flexible planning vehicle that we use to support strategic and long-range planning. We want to match short-term and long-term goals and help them help us as the Jenkins project evolves. Other projects, I think, would want something similar. They would likely want to be able to help their developers, their users, understand where they are now and where they are going as time advances. If we look at the interoperability special interest group in the Continuous Delivery Foundation, we get one view of a roadmap. This is a good view in terms of they see things that are currently on their roadmap as more specific, more granular, and more detailed as they advance their roadmap further. Things that are just near term are a little wider focus and have greater flexibility, and things that they've put into their future bucket have a very broad scope, very flexible. That's one way of representing a roadmap. The GitHub roadmap is represented as a series of entries in their tool, and it lets people see quarter by quarter how GitHub intends to evolve their roadmap. Tekton represents their roadmap, including mission and vision, and then they track individual roadmap items using issues. And this view of it allows Tekton users to see how is Tekton evolving and what's the progress on specific areas of interest. That roadmap view helps people see just how Tekton is evolving. Likewise, the Jenkins roadmap has a presentation that shows us time-oriented, what are the things that are already released and are on the roadmap, or what things are in preview, development has begun and we're actively working with them. Now, how is it going? Or things that are currently under development. In addition, we've also got placeholders for things that are coming relatively soon, as in near term, or things that are an indeterminate sometime even further in the future. Now, why a roadmap? Well, let's look at it from our story. The experience for us is that our story starts almost 15 years ago, over 15 years ago, with a developer who had a tool to create and a task to perform. That tool needed to help him do automated software build and delivery. And those software build and delivery tasks were repetitive, and he wanted to automate them. Thanks to Kosuke, today Jenkins is an open source force. Today, millions of developers and software engineers have joined the Jenkins community to build great software. It's amazing the different things that have been built with Jenkins and that use Jenkins. Part of the Jenkins story is how we tell people and how they tell us why Jenkins is the way for them to do what they're doing. And their responses are quite inspiring. So if we look back at the many years, we can see presentations by Kosuke that will highlight over 15 years of software evolution. Those 15 years of evolution give us a highlight of what it is to create a flexible, extensible automation server that can be used worldwide in many, many ways. So what is Jenkins? Well, at its core, it's an automation server, an automation framework that supports making things happen automatically. It is open source. The source code is visible, available, buildable, maintainable, extendable. It is a component that relies on plugins to perform its major extensions, and there are over 1,700 plugins available for Jenkins to help get its work done. There's a very large community of users and developers who maintain and care for it. And if you wish to have commercial support, there are companies around the world that provide commercial support for Jenkins. Now, what is it that has made Jenkins successful and that other projects might use as a model to decide how to do open source software that becomes widely used? Well, one, it's extensible. Jenkins was designed from the very beginning to be extended in ways that help users. Its general purpose, rather than being focused on a very specific task, it allows many different tasks to be performed in very general ways. And it has a vibrant community that encourages and invites contributions from others. Now, the Jenkins community itself has evolved over time. It started with open governance, and it's required and lived by that open governance ever since its beginning. The evolution of Jenkins is defined by its own contributors. Those people who are willing to help get to define how it evolves. It's open to anyone, either an individual or a company. And maintainers are granted full freedom in their plugins to implement as they see fit. That freedom allows them the flexibility to move rapidly and to evolve capably. Now, what does that mean in terms of how Jenkins looks? Well, as an example, in 2019, there were 67 core releases of Jenkins, over 2,600 plugin releases from over 5,000 contributors in 111 countries. Jenkins is a worldwide force. In terms of comparing CDF and CNCF projects, you can see that number of developer contributions by project Jenkins is one of the largest in the suite of those projects managed by CDF and CNCF. The project continues to grow. What you see here is a graph provided by the Linux Foundation Statistics Project that shows us pull requests across the years from 2011 into 2020. We're delighted with that ongoing growth, but ongoing growth brings challenges. So as communities get larger, they may develop some sense of isolation in subgroups within the community. That isolation can be disconcerting or challenging to support. There can be a perception of lack of transparency because some conversations may occur in different places and people may not be aware of those conversations. There can be a perception of a lack of focus on the crucial or vital initiatives because people are instead doing the things that are most interesting to them. It can also be difficult in large projects to get multiple contributors to gather behind large initiatives. We may have some major thing that needs work, but we need to coordinate and bring them together to help with that work. It may also be daunting for new contributors to join an initiative because they may not be aware that the initiative exists, or they may not know how to connect with it, or there may be other barriers there. All challenges that can get in the way of the continued growth and development of a community. So what does the Jenkins community's history look like? Well, we started in 2011 with open governance and open governance meetings as a standard way of operating. In 2015, 4 years later, we found that we needed some more structure. So we added the concept of teams and of Jenkins officers and sub-projects. That's where we developed the infrastructure sub-project and the release officer and the security officer. Now in Jenkins in 2017, the Jenkins enhancement proposal process came into being that allows us to define how we're going to do major Jenkins enhancements. These could be process related, they could be feature related, they may be compatibility related or platform related. Jenkins enhancement proposals have helped us as we've refined and improved Jenkins. In 2018, we added Jenkins special interest groups. Special interest groups allow a group of individuals to gather together on a specific topic. For example, Cloud Native is one of our special interest groups, or the documentation special interest group, or the user experience special interest group. Each of those special interest groups gathers together a group of interested contributors working on a general subtopic. In 2019, we implemented governance board elections and became a member of the Continuous Delivery Foundation. That was a governance change for us and has been a great help. And then in 2020, we became a CDF graduated project. And as a graduated project, that says that we've achieved key CDF milestones in terms of becoming more effective in our governance. We're so grateful to the Continuous Delivery Foundation for helping us through that CDF graduation process and for the value that it brought to us as we learned how to do more effective management of the project. Now, about that same time in 2020, the question came, isn't it about time that we become more public about our plans for Jenkins? A public roadmap was the idea. What happened was in February of 2020, at the Contributor Summit we hosted at FOSDEM in Belgium, we began initial discussions of the concept of a Jenkins roadmap. This is February 2020. In March of 2020, the first Jenkins enhancement proposal was brought forward, JEP 14, to do a Jenkins roadmap. And then in April, the initial preview of the Jenkins roadmap was published. For the next 3 months, April, May, and June, we reviewed the roadmap. We discussed it in mailing lists. We brought topics to the special interest groups. And finally, in July of 2020, the public announcement of the original Jenkins roadmap. Now, what were the guiding principles that should govern the Jenkins roadmap? And these guiding principles seem important to other communities as they consider whether or not they should use roadmap as a technique. First, the roadmap is community driven. It is chosen and monitored and tracked by the Jenkins community, not centered on a single vendor, not centered on a single technology or single idea. It is driven by the community. It is managed through an open and a transparent process. We make sure that others are able to see at all times how the roadmap is evolving and what's happening. It uses data that is stored publicly and is available out in the open so that others can see it and use it if they wish. There is intentionally no commitment to dates in the Jenkins roadmap, just as physical maps of roads do not have dates on them. Likewise, the Jenkins roadmap does not make commitments related to dates. In fact, there is no commitment on the Jenkins roadmap on delivery at all. It is an open source, community-driven process that allows people to offer ideas, to evolve and improve those ideas, but does not promise that it will deliver on any component. Now, the Jenkins public roadmap looks like this in its presentation. We see time listed from left to right, things released, all the way through to things that are in the distant future. We see categories and topics. This presentation is focused on Jenkins users so that they know where things are in the roadmap. It's focused on Jenkins contributors so that they can easily click an item in the roadmap and go find ways to contribute to that. It's focused on Jenkins adopters and vendors so that they know what's coming. Now, there are initiatives in every area of the project represented on the roadmap. For instance, various important features are represented on the roadmap. How we package or ship or deliver Jenkins is on the roadmap. Which tools we use or how we want to refine and improve those tools are on the roadmap. Governance and infrastructure are both on the roadmap. And to help people visualize, the timeline horizons are captured in the columns across the screen to highlight to people where things are going and how they are evolving. So let's get closer into some of these roadmap items and let's take a look and see how they help us. The user experience, for instance, is a crucial place where Jenkins is working to improve. As an example, here you see that on the leftmost column in the production use, we've got dark theme and UI theme management. Those are UI things and user experience things. Site search, again, user experience, and modernizing the mirror infrastructure because that is very much about the experience that a user has. As we advance through time, we see other things like documentation improvements that are, again, part of the user experience, terminology cleanup, part of the user experience, accessibility, all components of user experience and how its roadmap is fitting to meet the needs of users. Cloud platforms likewise have a similar evolution. Kubernetes is a significant portion of where our cloud platform strategy is going. It highlights how we want to be readily usable in a Kubernetes environment. Meetups, documentation, specific plugins and storage build results, all part of the evolution. Pluggable storage just makes sense in cloud native environments. In addition, the Jenkins file runner is part of our cloud platform's roadmap, all part of the evolution shown by the roadmap. Now, the Jenkins roadmap is not just about features. It is used by the community to track much more than features. And other projects probably should consider the same thing, that A roadmap is more about the people we're trying to serve than it is about the items on the map. Community initiatives are on our roadmap. For instance, how do we onboard new contributors? How do we reach out to underserved communities or to underserved teams and individuals? Which tools should we use? How should we govern the project? And how should our infrastructure best support the over 250,000 Jenkins controllers that are running in the world? Let's get some examples of some of the success stories that we've seen in the Jenkins roadmap. For example, the Jenkins Tecton client plugin has been on the roadmap and has now been released to allow Jenkins to interact with Tecton as an execution engine. Read-only configuration as code. Now, we not only have the ability to configure Jenkins with code, but we can actually define the permissions in Jenkins such that the configuration can only be changed through code, that users can be taken from them the ability to reconfigure their Jenkins UI so that they have to do it as code. In addition, the UI management now supports the dark theme and other user selectable themes. The mirroring improvements were part of the Jenkins roadmap and now allow us to do all sorts of much better interaction for users with mirrors that are close to them and automatically maintained for them. Plus, the new Windows installer was created and run through the roadmap process. The roadmap process has helped unify and guide Jenkins development as we've advanced step by step through the project. The dark theme, for instance, presents a thoroughly modern, much more commonly felt experience with dark background for those who prefer a dark theme. The mirror infrastructure work has added new mirrors around the world. Now uses HTTPS to access those mirrors instead of HTTP, and it provides status reports for users and for administrators to understand how the mirror network is operating. Now, there have been some challenges, and you should be aware that the challenges are predictable and likely to happen to any project that uses a road mapping technique. One does not simply create a roadmap. It takes much more than just simply saying, I'm going to create a roadmap. Some of the challenges we've experienced have included inconsistencies in the roadmap, where the roadmap does not accurately reflect or does not completely reflect what's happening, or cases where something's been added to the roadmap and then progress simply stalled. We've had cases of things where we're worried about what happens if too many items get added to the roadmap so that it's a distraction because of bloat. Or what about those things that arrive that are not on the roadmap but might be interesting? What do we do with off-roadmap initiatives? Well, let's talk first about roadmap inconsistencies. We've had cases where things just weren't consistently represented on the roadmap. And our solution really has been to regularly review the roadmap in special interest group meetings, in governance meetings, in regular discussions, so that we can see and talk with each other about the evolution of the roadmap. Now, we've had cases where an item was added to the roadmap and then the progress just seemed to stall. It paused either because it was much bigger than expected, or it was much more difficult to coordinate. Many different possible reasons. People may have needed to leave or temporarily suspend their work. Some of our solutions have been to make things more publicly visible about this progress, highlight, hey, this is what's happening, so that we can encourage others to join and to help out. The initial instigators of a roadmap item do not necessarily need to be the ones who complete it. We've also found that it helps significantly if we have special interest groups leading those initiatives. By having a special interest group lead the initiative, we have an overarching view that can better handle people who may need to come and go from the project as they're evolving that initiative. We've used outreach programs like our interactions with She Code Africa, or with a community bridge from Linux Foundation, or with Outreachy. Those have helped us as we've tried to facilitate progress on specific roadmap items. We've also learned that it's great just to ask people to help. And sometimes we have even had to remove things from the roadmap because they just did not become worth the effort to carry them forward. Now, what about bloat in roadmaps? Well, roadmap bloat, we've learned to handle by filtering and categorization, and by setting some general guidelines on how many things should be allowed in each category of a roadmap. Those guidelines have helped us keep things manageable and reasonable. As an example, here's a snapshot of infrastructure and services as the category, highlighting that there actually aren't that many items on the Jenkins roadmap relative to infrastructure and services. Helps people see, if they just choose that one thing, relatively simpler item. And that guidance, number of items per category, filtering and categorization, have been a great help for us in managing roadmap bloat. Now, what about off-road initiatives that are off the roadmap? As an example, we may have someone who has a great idea and they start it. Well, we embrace that. We would love for that to be included in the roadmap when it makes sense. And to assure continuity, we tend to encourage those things that came in from off roadmap to join a special interest group or a sub-project, so that if there were any question with regard to continuity, we could carry it forward in the special interest group or the sub-project. So let's talk briefly about what we learned here. We've learned that roadmaps help us coordinate effort. They help us do a better job of helping contributors help the project. Roadmaps also share the vision of where the project is going. They help people understand how Jenkins is going to evolve, and can help you as you share how your project is going to evolve. Now, it is important that roadmaps are not schedules. At least for us, it mattered deeply that we did not attempt to place dates on anything. It's just an indicator of where the next things are that we're working on and what things we are currently working on. Intentionally not including dates has been very helpful for us, because we don't have to have date-based disputes and discussions. We talk about what things are being done and which things are not being done. Now, roadmaps do not make any promises. We don't promise this, that, or the other thing. It's just a view to what is coming or may be coming. And as the final, most crucial point, the roadmap is not the travelers. The people who are involved in the project are the travelers. They're the ones that matter. The users, the contributors, the involved, the participating, those are the people, and the roadmap is just there to serve their needs and help coordinate their efforts. Now, we'd like to remind you that it's a great time to contribute. It's a great time to contribute to open source. It's a great time to contribute to projects like Jenkins. Jenkins has ways to contribute, including you could join us to present at meetups. You could share implementations of code. There are lots of plugins and many components that you could help. You could assist other users, help them get the most out of Jenkins in their experience by answering their questions or guiding their efforts. If you're a native language speaker in a non-English language, you could help by translating Jenkins into other languages. You could assist us by testing Jenkins, either interactively or with automation. We love automated tests. We love interactive tests. We're grateful to have testers and look forward to their contribution. You could help us document Jenkins, make it easier for others to get started using Jenkins. If you're a web designer or interested in user experience, you could help us by improving the design and the UI that Jenkins runs. You could also help us review code. We look forward to all those contributions and would be very grateful to have them. Please share your questions online. We look forward to those questions. Very grateful that you've joined us today at CDCon 2021. Thanks very, very much.
Okay, I think we can unmute ourselves, right? So thanks a lot to everyone who participated in the talk and for so many questions. We are happy to continue. There are many community channels you can join. And yeah, thanks a lot to Mark for doing the entire recording because yeah, I wasn't completely unavailable last week. And yeah, you know, last week was a bit beyond the deadline. So thanks a lot to Mark for doing all the recording.
Oh, thank you, Oleg. It was a lot of fun to develop the presentation together. A lot of fun to talk.
Yeah, so I hope we answered all questions. If not, again, we have a chat, well, many chats. I suggest that now, if you have a question, you would rather join our Discord channel, community.jenkins.io, and we will do our best to create a thread there just after this call so that everyone is welcome to join and ask about roadmaps, etc. And yeah. For other communities who are interested to learn from us, just join one of our governance meetings or engage in the mailing list. Yeah, we know that Tracy and other studios team members, so they reached out to us to share some experiences and to learn from us. And yeah, we will talk about that. And yeah, there is an interesting question from Tracy. Is the secret to keeping contributors engaged? Yeah, the secret is easy, just carrying water and chopping wood. So it's not a single activity. It's a lot of various activities here and there, like maintaining social media, maintaining communication channels, engaging with contributors, encouraging them to present. So can I just share the screen, by the way? I think
so. I think there's a facility to allow screen sharing. Let's see. Nope.
Oh.
Nope.
Yeah, I just noticed that actually my window was muted. So yeah, so sorry if you were trying to say something and I wasn't hearing you because it was me, not you.
Okay. Well, and Naomi just tells us she's ending the session. So Tracy, thank you. Excellent question. Thanks very much. And
yeah,
we can continue the chat elsewhere.
Yeah, for the entire session, maybe 2. Bye.
Bye.